Hi, I'm Jack Tyler from the Boston Sax Shop, and on this episode, we're going to see how long I can balance the saxophone on my index finger. Not very long. Hey Jack, are there any soprano saxophones that you would recommend on a budget, specifically lower than $1,000? I guess the short version, not to sound like a is no. $1,000 for a soprano is kind of a tall order. Now, interestingly enough, you can get a saxophone that will play relatively well for $1,000 and an alto and a tenor. But when you get into like baries and sopranos, I feel like you do have to invest a little bit more in order to get a horn that might play in tune. You know, most of the instruments that are in this genre are just copies of modern horns, and when you get into stuff that's really cheap, it's usually not a great copy. And if the tone hole placement, especially on a soprano, which is much more paramount because it's just a smaller horn, so there's less margin for error in terms of the diameter of the tone holes, the height of the tone holes, and again, exactly where they're placed in the body. If you're spinning on the lower end of the spectrum, you're gonna get a horn that doesn't have that attention to detail. And again, probably is gonna play even less in tune than a regular soprano. My recommendation for a soprano on a budget, which is something that even if you don't stick with it, you can still sell and get a lot of your money back out of, would be the Yamaha 475. This is a great horn that you can find used for probably between $1,500 and $1,700. I think new they retail for about $2,500 at the filming of this video. And to me, that's a great quality horn. Feels good under the fingers, plays in tune, and again, will hold its value over time much better than a purple one that you might get on Amazon. Hey Jack, I've been playing Boston Sax Shop reeds for the last couple years and love them. Just curious, is there a particular reed preparation that you do when you're breaking in a new box? Now, of course, everybody has their personal method for breaking in reeds. I'll tell you what works for me. So when I get a new box of reeds, the first thing that I do is make sure that they have the Boston Sax Shop logo on them. If they don't have that logo, I immediately throw them in the trash can. No, just kidding. Okay, this is what I actually do. So if it's a new reed, I'm gonna get some tap water, not vodka, not anything crazy, just regular tap water. Don't put it in your mouth, it'll warp. Soak the reed and soak the thick part of the reed, the butt, basically for about 3 minutes. Then you're gonna flip it over and soak the vamp part, that's the part that you articulate, the part that vibrates, for 2 minutes. Then I play the reeds usually for like 10 to 15 minutes on the first day. Now, when I was really playing, 5 or 6 hours a day, I'd probably be rotating between 3 to 5 reeds. So with a new box, I'd play each of those reeds for about 15 minutes, wipe them off, put them back in my reed case. Of course, it wasn't a Boston Sax Shop reed case back then, but that's the one that I recommend now since it has a glass plate, which means the reed's gonna dry really nice and flat. And then the next day, I probably do the same thing, soak it, play it for 15, 20 minutes, and then kind of keep elongating that time period. After you get to about 30 or 45 minutes of playing, which usually takes about a week if you're playing them every day, you can usually kind of just go nuts at that point and just keep playing that reed. Because what's gonna happen is the porous fibers at the end of the cane is gonna start to seal up, it's gonna start to not get waterlogged, and then you can play the reed for a longer period of time. So usually it's about a week for me to break in new reeds. I hope that that helps. Hey Jack, my take is that the size of your mouthpiece should dictate the size of your reed strength. What do you think about that? For most saxophone players, the tip opening and the reed strength typically balance each other out. You're either using one of 3 setups. One would be a moderate tip opening with a moderate reed strength. I'd say this is the most popular. It's the most conducive to most saxophone players. So like on tenor, that would be like a 7-star with like a number 3 reed. Now, when you go to a larger tip opening, most people are gonna offset that by a softer reed. So if you're getting into the 8 stars, 9 stars, 10 stars, you're probably gonna have to drop down to a 2.5 or a 2 unless you're Joe Levant. Now, the opposite, if you're looking at something like John Coltrane's setup, you've got a 6-star, something very small in terms of the tip opening, you're gonna need a harder reed to get that resistance. So, a 3.5 or a 4. But of course, there's always exceptions to those rules. But I would say if you're experimenting with different tip openings and different reed strengths, I would try one of those 3 combinations first, just to get a feel for if you like it or not.